Hello, I'm Cynthia Fleming, Executive Artistic Director of Salt Lake Acting Company. And it's my pleasure to welcome you virtually to SLAC's Chapel Theater. I'm on the set of Elaine Jarvik's Four Women Talking About the Man Under the Sheet. Last March, we were set to bring this world premiere to our audiences, but the global pandemic had other plans. We were able to present one dress rehearsal to a small audience before closing our doors temporarily. Those of us in attendance knew that we witnessed something magical, but we didn't realize that we would be away from this beloved building and our audiences for so long. However, we believed in Elaine's play so much that we are determined to see that it gets its audience, whether it's virtual, in person, or a hybrid of both in August. We hope you enjoy this short glimpse into the world of this play, and I'm pleased to turn things over to key members of the creative team. Please welcome playwright Elaine Jarvik, co-directors Jason Bowcutt, Martine Green Rogers, and SLAC's EDI dramaturg and actor Latoya Cameron. Thank you.
Well, I'm just excited to see everybody once again to talk about Four Women Talking About the Man Under the Sheet and having a conversation about the play. But first, before we do that, let's go ahead and introduce ourselves because we know each other, but not everybody else knows us yet. So just to get the ball rolling, I can start. So hi, everyone. I'm Latoya Cameron. I am going to monitor this conversation today. And my association with Four Women, I am actually an actor as well, and I portray the character Zoe.
I'm Elaine Jarvik. I'm the playwright, just playing myself.
Hi, I'm Jason Bowcutt. I'm one of the co-directors.
Hi, my name is Martine Green Rogers. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am also co-director and dramaturg. Almost forgot about that part.
I'm always curious about how plays develop and why certain stories stand out to playwrights and why we dive into it on putting it on paper and pen or putting it on our laptops. So Elaine, I'm just curious, do you want to give us a general setup of the play, but then also what inspired you to want to tell this play, to tell this story?
Sure. I like the way SLAC describes it. They say a meta-theatrical historical comedy, which is a mouthful. Historical because it's about history, and comedy because hopefully it has some humor in it. And meta-theatrical because, not to give too much away, it takes place in the present in a theater, but also takes place in 1895, starring Susan B. Anthony and three other women. That's the Four Women. And then there's the dead man under the sheet. That's Frederick Douglass. So the Four Women are Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton. They were both suffragists. Helen Douglass, who was Frederick Douglass's second wife, and Frederick Douglass's daughter, Rosetta. I started thinking about this play in 2017 when I got a call from a friend of mine who's a historian, Barbara Jones Brown, and she knew I am interested always in history and writing about history, and she said, hey, in 2020, it's the 100th anniversary of women getting the vote in America and the 150th anniversary of women getting the vote in Utah. You should write a play. So that sounded good. So I started reading books. I read books about Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton and suffrage in general and Utah women suffragists. And then I wrote a bunch of stuff and it wasn't very good. So I thought I'd just give up and take up a hobby. But then I remembered one line from one of those dozen or 15 books that was about the morning after the death of Frederick Douglass. And on that morning in 1895, Susan B. Anthony shows up, uncalled for, I think, just shows up at the home of Douglass's widow, Helen, to sit with her as she mourned. And I thought, oh, there's got to be something, there's something to that story, because why did she show up? And I knew that Susan B. Anthony and Frederick Douglass had been friends. They both had been abolitionists. They both had worked for women's rights and for suffrage, but they also had this very uncomfortable relationship that centered around the 15th Amendment. Would the amendment be given to both men and women at the same time, or just to men, and including Black men? Susan thought it should be for men and women, and Frederick said, no, let women wait. We need this for Black men now. And so that's what happened. And it took 50 more years for women to get the vote. And I thought there's some interesting parallels between then and now, the intersectionality of feminism and race, how things have changed and haven't changed. And then this whole minefield of what an activist does to navigate in the world in order to make progress happen. And sometimes that includes maybe doing things that aren't, well, in Susan's case, maybe she was a little bit racist. So that's pretty much how the story came about.
Now I'm going back in time and thinking of the preview that we had. I remember having a friend who came to the show. I gave her one of the preview tickets, and she was just like, she like dolled herself up. She was like, it's my girls' night. Like, I'm going to enjoy this show. And literally talked to her after, and she was sobbing because she was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know this is so powerful. I thought it was something else. And like, oh, I need to bring it's just interesting how she was like, I wanted to have a girls' night and bring my girls to see this play, but she still had the same response. Like, no, I need to bring my girls here to see this because it was so impactful for her. So I thought that was really, really interesting how that effect of just even the title can kind of shifts people's perspective, draws them in, and also shocks them, which is really cool.
Yeah, because the other choice was Susan B. Anthony tries to get the vote, or something, which didn't sound very interesting. So yeah, I tried to lure people in.
That sounds like a paper you're writing.
Right. But unfortunately, after the preview, let's talk about what happened. It was March 12th, 2020. We all know what 2020 brings up for all of us individually and as a collective. Let's just talk about what happened so people can...
The rehearsal process, it's some of the most amazing actors in town, by the way, including Latoya. It was an incredible process. It's a play that pushes boundaries, and we dug into it. And I think that we had gotten to a place where we had, at the point in which the play was about to be produced, it was a strong play for the time that we were in. And we, a lot of work at the beginning, then we reached a point, and then the play started to really click. And then we got to a point where we're ready to open, and I was very excited for audiences to come and experience it and to see the really beautiful acting. And we had one preview, and yeah, the audience, they really responded. I had a friend who's there as well. And you never know what people are going to take from it, but the response was so good, and I was really excited. And then we got a call the next day, and it was all shut down.
So then now I'm curious about, with the pandemic happening last year, the postponement of For Women, also just us as individual artists, and also the death of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, and the continued murders and violence towards Black bodies. I know for me, it informed me a lot last year, just as being a part of the bigger picture and being a part of a small picture. It just was like, it shook me to my core. And honestly, I went to a rage space on all areas of everything that I was doing. I was just like, I'm going to set things on fire. And I don't care if people get angry or whatever they're going to do, but this is how I'm responding to this moment. And I'm okay with responding like that in my moment. So with everything as individuals, if you would like to answer, I'll leave it up to you. how did that inform you as individuals and also as artists?
I'm happy to jump in. The thing that's interesting to me about what happened during the summer of 2020 is that in the whole scheme of things, nothing actually changed about how I go about my business. And part of the reason why is because like I recognize that as a Black woman who is an educator, who has a PhD, as a Black woman who is a dramaturg, and unfortunately or fortunately, like actually it's more just unfortunate, I sit in a field in which there aren't a lot of bodies of color. Like I study as an educator and I teach gender and race critical theory. Like nothing changed. Like to me, the one thing that changed was that I was like, oh, thank goodness. The thing that I've been screaming about for years with a Z, like now at least there is now white attention to this thing. Yay. Now, can we all get to work again? Like, like the work that I've already been doing, can we all just get to the work now? Was kind of where I was. And so, but I think the one thing that did kind of change is that, and this is, I mean this, like for those who don't know this, who are listening or watching this, I used to teach at the University of Utah before I got to my current position at the State University of New York at New Paltz. And I had a lot of students, former students, reach out to me and they were like, oh my goodness, this thing. And I mean, one of them was even so blunt to be like, this thing that you were ranting about that I just thought you were a crazy person for talking about, it's a real thing. And I was like, well, I don't know how I feel about the fact that you thought I was crazy, but I'm glad that you now understand the thing that I was talking about is a real thing. So, I mean, I think the only thing that has really changed is that I see more people in our industry trying to make an effort. You know, some of it is guided in a really great way. Some of it's slightly misguided in a not so great and maybe even potentially harmful way. But at least people realize that this is something that needs to be discussed now. So I'm, you know, hopeful in that way that I, you know, hope springs eternal, that this will mean something different. Just even thinking about how we go about doing all the theater that we do, not even just this show, but all the theater that we do moving forward, and what the larger impact of telling stories can be as a result, if we're all in this together and we're really thinking about crafting narratives in a specific and thoughtful way in order to like help illuminate these things. But, you know, I'm always just thinking about this kind of stuff anyway. Like I think about Sleep Deprivation Chamber by Adrienne Kennedy. I mean, that play was written in the 90s, if I remember correctly, and like was talking about the same things that, you know, people are just as a sort of larger mainstream culture thinking about. So anyway, that was a really long ramble to say that is where my brain is.
As a playwright, I had already been worried that did I have a right to tell part of this story, and luckily I was able to talk to Martine a lot and you know, inform me about that, and Latoya and Yolanda, and but in a way I feel sort of grateful that I had this chance to do a redo, because now with everything that's happened, I think it's a stronger play because in the first place, the characters of Zoe and Rosetta, I think, are stronger characters now, especially Zoe. Maybe they would have been more reticent before, and or maybe weaker, and they just would not. They would not do that anymore. They were going to speak up, and I also made Zoe not just the director, but the artistic director of this theater, because I wanted her to have more power. And Martine pushed me a lot on what would a strong Black director sound like. And I don't know if I got it right, but tried.
Yeah, Latoya, I would say I've really shifted. Like, all of the events of this past year, have changed me. I've always been an ally, you know, and I'm gay. I've lived in a minority kind of class, but it's not the same. And my eyes have truly been open to that. And I think I really started to say, and this is going to change my approach to anything I do artistically going forward, is am I the person that should be doing this? That's really a question I have to ask myself now. And going back, Elaine, I love you and I'll always work on your plays, but I don't know if the original approach I would say yes to now, as I did originally. There are things that are happening in this play that I have not lived. I don't have the right to try and define for the people who have lived it. And that, I think, has really gotten to, thankfully, Martine agreeing to come in and co-direct with me. There was a level at which I was like, I got this play up to the point at which it was literally produced and happening. So I didn't feel like abandoning the play made sense, but it also didn't feel like it made sense for me to just continue working on this without bringing in better perspectives and creating a safer environment.
That's fair. I want to just jump in for a second and throw some thoughts in there. One of the things that I always have a good time talking to my artists in training, as I like to call my students, are there artists, full stop, and they're in training, full stop, is that one of the things that I think it is our entire industry's responsibility to do is really raise our cultural competency, like generally. And so I am very much the artist that would never say something. And Jason and I even had this conversation. I would never say Jason isn't the person per se, depending on what Jason feels like he's bringing to the table to talk about these conversations, because there are white directors that I think can tell Black stories, but part of it's because they've done the work. They have done the work to understand the culture. They have also made strategic decisions. Like, are they taking a job away from a potential Black director? If the answer is no, then like those are all the things that come together to really shape whether or not someone's the right person to tell a story. But, I think we are all on a journey. And I think as long as we stay on a journey, hopefully our industry will be better for it. I think it's usually when people stop or they give up or they don't do something because of, this or that or whatever, like they make a mistake and because they're worried about cancel culture and all that other stuff, they never come back to actually confront the thing. And I think this is this process has been like such a great eye-opening experience for everybody on it for numerous reasons. And like, these are the things that I enjoy about the power of what theater can do, that we can tackle social issues within our own ranks, as well as on the stage through this piece that we're doing. And I find that amazing and exciting. And the reason why I have not given up on theater yet.
Amen. That's what I have to say to that. Well, I mean, that will lead me into asking, since we kind of touched a little bit on the development of Zoe and the development of Rosetta, I feel like we should talk more about that because I know they don't know, but everyone who's watching this conversation, we've been working on what Elaine mentioned on trying to bring more enrichment and full characters of Zoe and Rosetta. Because at the beginning, they felt very, to be honest and blunt, like, what do they call it? Background drops, to fulfill the white counterparts' storylines, to fulfill theirs. And so as an actor, I remember I'm just like, how am I going to motivate this? Because why would I, who I'm playing Zoe, the actor, why would I ever want to put myself in a situation where I have the power, if I was a white director, a white male director, or even just a white female director. But as a Black female director, I felt so powerless. And trying to find power in there but what was actually written was very, very complicated, because I think it got misinterpreted as like different kinds of I'm going to be blunt as well, stereotypical kind of stuff, like, oh, she's just coming off angry, when she's actually coming off as like taking control of situations. And so let's talk a little bit more about, or like before I go into that, or Rosetta, like what's her full story in regards to like her relationships with not only Helena, and also the relationships with Susan B. Anthony, but also what's the relationship with her father? What's the relationship with the house? Like, although there's not a lot of information historically, but there's still some. And then since we're in the world of the theater, why can't we allow ourselves to play and to actually see a little bit bigger outside of what we think would be, what am I trying to say? Like, I did it and here's the period, versus like, what's the ellipses, I always say, about certain characters and stuff. So let's talk about the development of Zoe and Rosetta a little bit.
There is not a lot written about Rosetta. I found a book that I'm not sure was totally accurate. She loved her father. She was not happy when he married this second wife, this white wife. And I think there was always tension between the three of them. And then there was a will, and she questioned the will. That really did happen. A lot of what I made up stuff, but it's the basis of it is true. Then there was that Rosetta, and then there's the Rosetta who's the actor playing Rosetta, and she was way more problematic, I think. I still don't know if I've gotten it right, but Martine, maybe you could talk a little bit about how I tried to make them.
Sure, we could talk process.
Okay.
So I think one of the things that always becomes important in moments like this, when you're writing outside of your own lived experience, is really thinking through, like, what are ways that I can gather the information that I need in order to understand an experience that I have not lived. And so one of the things that, just in terms of process, as Elaine was going back to the drawing board with some of these characters, I said, here are some things to look at. Go watch these things. Like, see how these women are talking about their work. Because I think part of, what I could do is, like, I can obviously speak to being a Black woman in theater, but I am definitely not the end all and be all of Black womandom in theater. And so I can give some insight, and we sort of got into the sort of nitty gritty of some of the things that were happening. And like Elaine and I actually just had some real, as I like to call them, real talk conversations about what I would do in these situations. But I also encouraged Elaine to find out what, in some way, either by like just looking at, how people are talking about their work in the theater or whatever, just like, what would other people do, and use that as a synthesis in order to say, okay, now that I have all of this information, Zoe's more this person than Martine, that kind of thing, which I think is super important. And I think also one of the things that also we really talked about, which I thought was, both helpful for me because it forced me to articulate the thing that I just do as opposed to that I live, that I just do, is saying, okay, if Zoe's going to end up in this situation, I don't want to give too much away, so I'm not gonna, but if Zoe's in this situation, why would there's got to be some payoff that she's seeing on the other end that she would risk all of this. So can we figure out what that risk, like, what is it that's on the other side that she would put herself in this situation and allow this to happen? So these are the kinds of questions that Elaine and I were sort of batting back and forth and having these conversations. And I think it was really fun to really get into this because I think, like I said, I think it was both illuminating for myself and to Elaine, like, really, what are the way that Black women play chess every day in the world, and not with the intent necessarily of checkmating anybody, but just to survive on the board.
Yes.
And so, yeah. So that's kind of the beginning of that process. And then we've continued that process for some irony, just because we can talk about it later. After we've finished recording this thing, we're going to have another script session where we get together and talk about some of the changes that have been made. So I think, the part that is the most important that Elaine is doing so magnificently is like being willing to have a process, to listen, to take the note and say thank you, and then go do the work, which I think is always the thing. Like, by the way, someone just actually put that on a shirt, and that makes me so happy. I need to go get it. Someone's like, just take the note and say thank you.
Coin it.
Right. Just take
Copyright. You heard it here first.
But that's part of this process. Like, if we're all working on, as I kind of said before, working on lifting everyone up in terms of cultural competency, that is the thing that has to happen. You have to listen, take the note, say thank you, and then be willing to fail miserably and come back and do it again. So that's the process. Blink.
To end this lovely conversation, I want to thank you all so much for your time. Sincerely, I cannot wait. Here's crossing fingers that we actually get to be in a room together this year and actually get to bring this play to its fullest actualization. But only time will tell, and the work will continue. So this next thing, you're going to see a scene between Zoe and Rosetta, portrayed by myself, Latoya, and portraying Rosetta is Yolanda Stange. Have a good day, and thank you so much. Thank you, guys and ladies.
Hey, can I talk to you for a sec? You okay?
Yeah, you?
Hanging in there. High heels, huh?
The same as Jim Crow.
It's like women with a Y. That is some white feminist bullshit.
They don't even know what to be angry about.
Did you see me when I made my entrance and the body wasn't there? I was like, hold on, wait. It's a play about a dead man's body and there is no dead man.
They said it was upstaging them.
Another black man's dead body that they don't want to think about. I used to tell myself, just keep your head down, do your craft, don't get mixed up in all the politics. But I am so done with that. It's just too late for that.
Yep.
So the question is, why are you letting all these women run all over you like this? You have the power here. You're the artistic director of this theater now. And this Felicity woman's coming in here like she's the one in charge, running right over you like she's the police or something.
It's complicated.
She wants us to change the place so she'll feel better. Look, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to come at you like that. But really, you're the one in charge.
Felicity's the one with the money. Now, what happens if under my watch, the theater can't pay the bills? The board will say, we shouldn't have hired a woman who doesn't know how to deal with the people with the money. Or we gave her a chance, and now look what she's done. We took a chance on a Black woman in the middle of the Rona when theaters are falling like flies, and now look.
We even posted a statement on our website in favor of Black Lives Matter.
We posted all the right words, and now she's gone and ruined everything.
Have you ever even talked to Felicity?
No, it's just paperwork back and forth with her office.
How do you picture her?
Spent the summer doing Zoom groups about being an ally. Is furious no one ever told her before about redlining and mass incarceration.
Belongs to one of those anti-racist book groups.
Has done the work.
And the playwright?
Yeah, she means well.
She wrote a one-note Black woman.
Yeah, I tried to tell her that, but she couldn't hear it. We're back!
We hope you enjoyed this brief preview and would consider joining us for the full production in August, maybe even as a subscriber. You can find more information at saltlakeactingcompany.org. Thank you so much, Elaine, Jason, Martine, Latoya, and Yolanda for your time today. And finally, thank you to you. So, until we can safely gather once again, stay healthy and stay creative.